All right, I am glad to be back and to see you guys by video. I know it's been a while. I've been struggling with some health related issues and just trying to address those. And so, exciting news. We're going to talk about Section 8 and the market as it currently stands. And I'm going to give you all some updates. So, this will be kind of a casual video. A little bit about me, a little bit about those cats I have, that for those of you that watch a lot. And as many of you know, I've got about 23 cats now, and I know about half the people that watch your channel. We discussed both Section 8 and a little bit of the personal. So, all right, getting started this morning. The markets appears to be returning to normal. And as you many know, as we've gone through a pandemic, it got rather severe. I know because owning Section 8 Consulting.com, I'm the owner of it. I do a lot of consulting work, and we deal with up to 1,000 clients a year. And through the pandemic, worked myself near the bone trying to help people navigate an almost an impossible situation when everybody loses their job, and a lot of people were restricted. A lot of people just quit jobs they hated, and there was a lot of bizarre things going on. So I think the market at this point, as expected, has returned to normal, and sometimes normal is not good. So one thing that we need to pay careful attention to is the fact that a lot of the federal subsidies and monies that have been given out throughout the pandemic are no longer present, and that's drying up. And though we've seen a little bit of a peak in a number of housing authorities around the nation begin to open, it's less than it used to be. And so I know that the next two videos will be about openings that will be coming up here in the next 30 or 60 days, and where y'all can apply. And when we talk about housing authorities, one of the rumors that has to be kind of dispelled is a lot of people believe that if you live in a specific county and that county has one housing authority and it's closed or they're out of vouchers, that is the end of your opportunity. And that's simply not true. One of the things that I've tried to preach, I guess, over the last 22 years is simply this. This is a federal program. It is funded, approved by Congress and the United States president, whoever that is at the time, and these funds are allocated down to a federal agency called HUD, Urban Department of Urban Development and Indian Affairs, which we so quaintly leave off. Problem with the housing authority, discriminatory behaviors, maybe violations of your civil rights, violations of the Disability Act, and so on. It's their job to investigate housing authorities. I know we've had a lot of people come in, oh, well, HUD's not giving out no voucher. Look, HUD never has. There's a HUD in D.C., and I believe there's 6 additional regional offices, and that is its job. So all that spending, that we've been doing throughout the pandemic to try to save the economy and so on, all that spending has started to dry up, as I thought it would. And so we return to these very normal times. And so what the normal times means that I think that there'll be a less frequency with the housing authorities opening, that the crisis is availed. Too bad we're still dealing with a lot of inflation look, it's extreme. Even when I go to town, I'm a little bit shocked at the fact that prices can jump 30% on a single item. So we all know about that. One thing I want to bring up real quick is, in addition to this little video, is, I spoke to you guys earlier about the Palm Beach Legal Society, legal aid throughout the U.S. Reached out to our office. We negotiated, and I will be making 2 videos, one for a bunch of attorneys. So the same people that you guys often run to with your legal problems will be taking advice from me. And in that 1-hour video, I'm going to be discussing a number of topics with attorneys, because attorneys are great at one thing: the law. They practice it. They understand the intent of the law. And they often defend you guys when you don't have a lot of money. You go to legal aid, and those guys are the ones that tend to back you. And in this situation, I'm going to fill in those gaps for those attorneys that don't understand the market. Because, look, they go to law school to learn laws. They don't, in principle, understand that the process of vouchers, policies, and procedures, okay? You overvalue the concept of what most attorneys know. And in fact, many law offices around the country throughout the years have contacted me. And so it's a partnership, and that's what that video will be about. The other will be a direct address to some of the biggest landlords, possibly in the nation, and certainly throughout the Florida region. And we're going to discuss some of the, kind of take out the mystery in dealing with this. Okay. Beyond that, as many of you know, we have finally, if I haven't checked in the last few minutes, but I have to tell you, it took forever to reach 25,000 subscribers. Now, that's a big deal on YouTube. Why is it a big deal? Well, it's not that big of a number. Clearly, there are people with 1 million or 1 billion followers, and that's no small feat. But look, I'm not a teenager that is spray painting my hair hot pink and decide to ride my bicycle off a roof. So I will never, these videos will never garner 1 million views. They're never going to go ballistic and viral. And so for a channel that addresses my subject matter to reach 25,000 people that are interested in what I have to say in relation to this profession is an extraordinary thing. I wish, of course, the videos would be viral. And I think that housing as a whole is something humans need. We're not monkeys. We don't fly through the trees. Housing is an important issue. And as we all age and we deal with the economy and the world that we're in, it's not the 1950s. We simply don't have the ability to save the same kind of money. Jobs you don't retire at a job and get a pension anymore. And most jobs don't last 30 years. You're lucky if you're in and out in 3 to 5, right? So that means that we have a lot of seniors that don't have the savings in place, and they need that money. And so they depend heavily sometimes at the end of retirement because of lack of money to be able to get housing choice vouchers, subsidies, and so on. It's an absolute necessity for nearly a third of the nation. I think that Section 8 as a whole has had a stigma attached to it from the 80s because, one thing the news does is it does a fantastic job of addressing people on things that are hot topics. They're cute to talk about, but it creates stigma because you're sampling a small market and you're suggesting that the system as a whole is only for people of a certain color that have 40,000 children and that have no incentive to ever work, and everybody's on food stamps. But the reality is the greatest portion of the whole market for Section 8 vouchers and so on or those that are veterans, that are seniors, and those that are disabled that probably would not have an alternative living situation without the help of the United States government. When you work, even at the smallest degree or even a short period in your life or time, you're paying taxes. And if there's not any shame in you actually collecting your Social Security check, then I do not see how it would be that much further for you to collect a housing choice voucher, which is a government subsidy. I've been trying to preach for, I guess, years to take the shame out of this because of the nonsense that people try to glamorize in the 80s. Section 8 and housing vouchers and HUD as a whole system isn't even fundamentally what it was in the 80s. It's not even fundamentally what it was in 2000, 2010, 2016. At this point, it has pretty much been narrowed down and subjugated to address those that actually need it. Now, of course, there are always been people that game the system. And in fact, my job as a consultant to deal with people, and in many ways, is to find legal exploits to it. But keep in mind that it's legal under the premise of federal code of regulation, titles, and acts to be able to utilize it. So it means the best man wins, right? Going on from there, guys. I'd mentioned in a prior 3 videos ago that I was going to retire because that in 2 years, which would have made the equivalent of 24 or 25 years in the industry. Now, I want to be clear that not all 25 years was this blaze of glory with perfection. In the early days, and most of you have been glad had you not met me at that time because many of my clients were test dummies. It took a lot to understand the system. And let's look at it as a perspective of what housing authorities genuinely are. For the bigger cities, they are owned generally by the city itself. So you have county employees working there. But public housing authorities can also be privately owned, and roughly 60% of them are. And so there's a trend going on as of current. Just like you go down to the hospital and you complain because the hospital has a bunch of doctors that have no interest other than barely treating you and charging you a lot, right? Because they're under these different investment groups and they're doing what's best to earn them money. Well, housing authorities now, to save money, and a vast majority are turning to this, is they're subcontracting all the administrative work to private companies. Thus, that's why when you call Sally or Bob over at the housing authority and they hang up on you, don't want to be bothered with you in your conversation. That's why. And it's becoming more and more that situation. The problem is it's actually perpetuating the mismanagement of housing authorities and the administration of vouchers. In other words, the perception of I can't stand the people I have to talk to. They have convoluted my case. I can't get a straight answer. They're requesting that I send information in 14 days, but they mailed the letter on the 13th day, and now I have 8 hours to respond. And so that's the many of the games that we have to play. And so that's how a lot of my clients come to me, and we book casework with them to try to help them absolve that, work with a law firm. And look, even a law firm doesn't have special powers. In fact, I wouldn't be talking for an hour with the Legal Aid Society if the attorneys all had the best answer. I think it's a combination of best minds and approaches to compel the housing authority to do its. Well, I'm going to try not to use profanities here today, but I'm going to use this and do their fucking job. We've got used to pandemic rules where we're in our bed slippers and we're watching Netflix and we're working from home, but yet we're supposed to be administrating at the housing authority. So how can you stimulate a person in their bed slippers that cannot be bothered to fucking help anybody in a housing because they're in their living room doing not jack? You see my point? And they're still playing pandemic rules where, oh, well, don't come in. We can't have you breathing on us. Look, that went out the window 3 years ago. It's time to go back to work, go do your job. That's another issue that's very serious on the market. And as many of you know, I have much to say about many things, and of course, my profanities and some of my videos are widely known. But you know what? It's like anything else in this world. You can either take things for its face value, reality, or you can have people sugarcoat it. And I just don't make a business of doing that. Whether it's offensive or people hate it, makes no difference. Most of you have been lied to enough. You've been through enough stress. You've lost enough sleep, and you can't even figure out what the hell's going on with your case. Much less get to the convoluted process of even getting a voucher. And let's also examine just housing authority websites. You ever notice when you need to go in there and you have one directive, and that's to go in, and I'd like to apply online to get a housing choice voucher. But most housing authority websites have convoluted and hidden links. In other words, they won't show you where on the website you can actually reach to get it. They would require you to read almost everything in the website, and then somewhere tucked in all that dialogue will be some hyperlinked word which would lead to the actual application, and then they further convolute that. And so it's to make it as painful and as miserable as possible to get through this process or find any app solution, and then ghost you on the phone. And so that's been the battle 20 years. Many of you guys think that I've got a magic phone when I deal with it. Look, they talk to me just as badly. They talk just as badly to the two attorneys I deal with. That's why most correspondence we deal with is a matter of record. In other words, when you deal with them, forget a phone call. You send them a certified letter from a lawyer with a letterhead and let them know that, hey, you watch your P's and Q's at this point, because if you're going to violate any part of the federal rules or entitles and acts, and if you're not going to follow the very policies and procedures you've gotten underwritten by Nana McKay or any other big organization that writes the policies for your housing authority, then your ass will be put in check. And you have the option to either comply or we'll step it up to the DO. Anyway, we can go up to DOJ, FHEO, or any other federal agencies that take a look at professional misconduct. And so trying to find different remedies, and going back to that one overwhelming realization, every housing authority in America operates like its own hamburger shop, has its own rules. You see the problem there is? And then you got a guy like me that spends a career doing this. And it means that I literally have got to have an understanding and policies and procedures and other things for each and every single housing authority in America, and keep that current because that can change, right? All right, let's do a few shout outs real quick. Shirley Griffin, good afternoon. How are you? Valerie Flores, good afternoon. Angela Catherine, thank you. She says, thank you back. Miss Flores goes on to say, thank you for everything. I appreciate all your videos. Karen Gibson, hello, everyone. And hello, Karen. Good morning. How are you? Are you down? Lopez, hello there. And glad to have you in the channel. Angela goes on to say, right, Spartanburg, South Carolina doesn't want to help at all. Well, I got to tell you, it seems to be almost a policy across the board to not be as helpful. Now, I will admit that PHAs are public housing authorities, which are answerable to the public. Okay. I will admit that their only job is to administer vouchers if you qualify. Now, here's where the sticky part is. If the housing authority's only job is for you to apply and then to make a determination, it is actually not their job to get on the phone and educate you about anything. They don't got to tell you anything. They don't got to teach you. They don't have to make you feel better. None of that stuff. And so that's one of the tough parts about this is because unlike most federal agencies that are having federal employees that are well paid, housing authorities, unfortunately, are not they are federally funded for vouchers, but those are not federal employees. And so they're paid about as well as the young lady working at the McDonald's handing out cheeseburgers. Now, how many times you drove through that McDonald's and got some attitude with your egg McMuffin? Don't expect anything different at the housing authority because a lot of people that have 200 and 300 cases that work there at the housing authority, they make little more than the young boy that you pay to mow your lawn. And so when you see attitude and lip service and all that, you should anticipate that level of ignorance with dealing with a lot of housing authorities. And you'd think, oh, well, don't these people have a master's or a PhD? No, they don't. Many which probably, and this probably is an insult, but it seems to me that they would struggle to get through 6th grade. Okay. All right. So I've gone on that tear real quick. Karen Gibson goes on, thank you for being here and lending your energy and effort. Well, I got to tell you, Karen, my energy is starting to wane over the years, but I try to keep it up. I know the last couple of weeks, man, I've been dealing with a number of health-related issues and trying to get that straightened out. Sarah Castillo, hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Miss Gibson, sir, is Section 8 debatable in New York? Yes. So Section 8, well, we shouldn't call it Section 8, okay? We should say that housing choice vouchers are available in every state in America, including contentiously in also Alaska and Puerto Rico, okay? And if you look at each county in a state, you may have multiple housing authorities you could deal with, okay? Like you have LA and then you have Orange County, and in some counties they have up to 11 housing authorities. And in other situations, if it's a small state, they may have 10 counties with only one housing authority, which is really, really bad. Like you have the rural parts of Texas, you get up in the panhandle, the upper part of Texas, and you could pull together 7 or 8 counties because of low populations and only one housing authority servicing it. So a lot of counties in America, over 10,000 of them, many of them do not even have a housing authority. Sally Richard, tell you what, Sally, let me take a sip of my coffee and then I'm gonna try to address your comment there. Now, speaking of my kitty cats, you'll know besides owning and running Section 8 Consulting, which is the love of my life, I think we were discussing at some earlier point about a pregnant cat I got. We call her Miss Muffin, and I think that she's going to drop a litter. And I'm at the threshold of reality with cats. I love to rescue them, help them, and drag them out of bad situations. But I got to tell you, if she drops 12 babies on me, we're going to be in trouble because I can't handle any more kittens and cats right now. There's so many of them popping around my house and office that it's almost, I'm becoming almost a person known widely as the crazy cat lady, though I'm not a lady. The perfect invention of that. But all right, moving back on. Sally Rich goes on to say, thank you for your teaching and your knowledge. I'm disabled and living on my cousin's couch. Okay. So when you establish a situation when you're surfing couch or sleeping in the car or you're surfing anywhere, you're not on a lease, you don't have a mortgage to a home, and you're simply on the good spirits of other people helping you, that is what we call technically imminently homeless, which means at any moment, if your situation were to drastically change, you could be in a situation where you're homeless. Now, as a technicality, like we did in the 80s when we had lots of opinions about what Section 8 is, homelessness has many faces. It doesn't mean you're under the bridge drinking beer and smoking crack, okay? Homelessness doesn't mean that you live in a homeless shelter. Many people that are living paycheck to paycheck, one big event happens and then everybody's on the sidewalk. Look, the federal definition of homelessness is sleeping where somebody's not designed to sleep. If there's not a toilet, a shower, and a refrigerator, then you're probably not being somewhere you should be. And so serving the council kind of puts you to imminent. And then of course there's chronic. What I was going to say to you, Sally, is there are some options available to you that could potentially get you a voucher quicker than others. Okay. Anyway, she goes on to say, I have two teens that had to move in with an abusive stepdad. So that also you have inclusion of domestic violence then. Um, what is the best type of Section 8 to sign up for? Well, Sally, I would need to know a lot more about your case, and I don't know that it'd be quite appropriate to share your private business in a public format like this, but I would need to speak to you. But based on those two factors of domestic violence and imminent homelessness, with the inclusion of two two individuals that are not adults, I would say that you probably wouldn't want to address Section 8 specifically because it'd probably take too long. But there's another system of vouchers on the continuum of care that could potentially address the immediate need and then allow you to move on to go on to get a Section 8 voucher. Okay. But I believe what you're looking for would be probably the emergency housing voucher. And let's discuss emergency housing vouchers. Now, when you hear the word emergency, it does imply quickly, right? But let's make no mistake. No voucher is going to issue and be administered in under than 30, 45, or 60 days, okay? A lot of people think they have an emergency. I'll just drive by the housing authority and I'll just go ahead and have them print me out a voucher. Nah, no, you won't. It's never going to work that way. So what they consider an emergency, if they get it to you in between 1 to 4 months, then they've met the emergency. And for the mere mortals, you'll wait anywhere from 8 to 15 years if you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, there are solutions out there. Michelle Jackson's been a minute. What about Hawaii? Well, Hawaii opened up another list about 30 days ago. But I need to know more about when you say, what about Hawaii? I want you to ask me a direct question about Hawaii. Hawaii is nice, yes, but I need to know more, Michelle. Karen Gibson, I love Kikis. Good. And that's what I call my cats, Kikis. Matter of fact, one just flew by. Mama, she's 22. She's a bitter bee, too. I'll tell you a quick story before we move on to the rest of this. Look, guys, if y'all join the channel for advice, I get that. If you have a problem with me sharing a little bit of personal stuff here and there throughout the video, this is not the channel for you. You got Sally and Bob that make videos. Yesterday, they were experts at fidget spinners. Today, they're going to give you 3 tips and tricks how to run down the housing authority and go print out a voucher, okay? There are lots of rodeo clowns that make videos. None of them are consultants. I'm the only one that I know of that makes videos on YouTube that actually have a professional demeanor for this. But if you struggle with me and my cats and the little stories, just go. Find somebody else to help you. Matter of fact, 211 would be a great option. Deborah Payne, hello there. Good afternoon, Deborah. How are you doing? Karen Gibson goes on to say, send them the real cat lady. Well, you know what? A lot of my clients are pretty close. As a matter of fact, one of my biggest requests from most clients is most of you are pet lovers, and many of which that struggle with the issue of housing and getting a voucher and the potential to be homeless is that you're unwilling to negotiate when it comes to leaving your cats and dogs. I get that. In fact, I had one, my entire career, I had one client goes, oh yeah, I'll just drop them off the pound. And I said, if you drop off your pets to the pound, we'll terminate your case. I haven't any interest in dealing with people that haven't any interest in the care or enjoyment of your pets. If it requires you to sell your soul to get a voucher, then I don't think so. Dues, sharing post immediately. Well, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Dues. Simper, Sarah. Now, that's a good name. I like that. Semper. Well, I can't even say the last part, so you have to help me out there, Semper. I'm 46, married with an 8-year-old. I'm on disability in Cook County, area of Illinois. Well, Semper, if I'm saying that part right, we've had lots of dealings with Cook County. And one of the things I like to say about Cook County and the state of Illinois is Illinois has never been on my radar as a state that I find particularly difficult, despite having hosting Chicago. Not like LA and Orange and New York, Queens, Bronx, and all those places. And even in fact, Florida is a much harder issue. So I think that you probably have some great opportunities in the state of Illinois. Michelle Jackson, I'll try to make an appointment. Well, Miss Jackson, I'd love to talk to you. This and that pepper. So that is an interesting name. I like that YouTube name you've got. I've been trying to get on the 5-year waiting list. I wouldn't get on any 5-year waiting list. Okay. Let me tell you why you guys shouldn't get on 5-year waiting list. And why you shouldn't just sit there wherever you're living and wait for the housing authority to open. Because by the time you do that, a decade or two will pass. Okay. And let's think about this logically. If the housing authority that you're dealing with locally, if they're doing a lottery, that means that they're making no distinction about who they can put on there. And you don't really know because they don't have any federal oversight as to who they're choosing. And so lotteries are not always a great thing. They're fun to get your name on, but it means there's no guarantee ever. And if you're waiting 5 years, that's absurd. We deal with up to 1,000 clients a year. In most cases, I'd say 91% of the time, we generally are able to get clients vouchers within 4 months. Okay. Now, am I suggesting that if you call me, you book an appointment, hey, I'm from Los Angeles, I want that voucher in 4 months. I know the housing authorities are closed, so I want to see you produce that miracle. No, it doesn't work that way. I'm suggesting to you that if we're federally funding and we're using federal funds from Congress to HUD and being administered down, that you are able to apply in every housing authority in America. If LA has got 400,000 people that apply for one voucher, what would be the difference applying there than going to, say, a cornfield in Iowa where the housing authority's got 50 vouchers collecting dust in a drawer? It only requires portability. And then many of you will argue this point, oh, well, Jay, it says under Title 24 that you must wait 12 months. You must receive the voucher, live in that damn county, and then port. You're wrong. Over 30% of the time, housing authorities around America, despite you living 28,000 miles away, will grant instant portability. In other words, hey, thank you for applying. We're going to cut the voucher. Let us know we're going to waive the portability aspect, and you can port it right back to wherever it is you live. Okay. Don't even try to argue that point with me because look, 22 years doing this, I know. The tough part is it's a numbers game of applying. So you're trying to multiply 50 up to 100 different applications across America. Then you've only got about a 30% chance that they're going to grant that portability. And then that's if you're able to match your specific preferences. So if the housing authority is listing different preferences, then you'd want to do an open state or public request against them to discover how many vouchers, who they're being issued to, and what are their specific preferences. If you understood that particular element, that means you'd be able to, compel them to give you a voucher on a short list. There are lots of housing authorities in America that have a 1 or 2 year waiting list. Now, when they imply that, what they don't tell you is somebody has to be the person that gets the voucher the first day. Somebody has to be the person to get the voucher at year number 2. Those that match the right preferences end up getting it really quickly. Those who come into this on that 2-year waiting list and say, I'm 19, I just got out of high school, I have no incentive ever to work in life, I've got a food stamp card down like a voucher, right? That'd be the person who would wait the whole 2 years because they'd have no preferences. Now you're starting to understand fundamentally how you could persuade the system by doing applications across the U.S., matching your preferences under state and federal requests, and then be able to get them to issue fairly quickly. It's an arduous process. It's a bit painful. Lots of pre-applications and primary, but it's effective. It's so effective that I've administered and helped on casework thousands of times, over 10,000. And in most cases, it does yield. Now, there are some unlucky people who simply don't have enough preferences, and it ends up being a lot of work, and they wait longer. But I know from our company's perspective, in probably 94, 95, sometimes 96% of the time, we're able to get an issuance within 4 months. Only an exceptional 4 to 6% that go over that. And then, of course, you have a loss ratio between 8 and 9% where cases go bad because sometimes you work with clients and because they're unable to abstain from alcohol, drugs, they have neurotic behavior because of mental health. Sometimes we just deal with simple entitlement. I know through the pandemic, we got a lot of soccer moms that were used to having everything, the suburban car, the big house. So when they would work with our company, they felt that they couldn't be bothered, that I was more like the guy there to scrub their toilet, and they couldn't be all bothered to answer the phone in. They were too good for themselves. So we just cut them loose and let them pick up the telephone. I said, give 211 a call. There are operators waiting for you 24 hours a day. They're going to give you about 3 minutes of advice. They're going to giggle and hang up on your stupid ass because that's the reality. Until that soccer, and I don't mean to be offensive, but until soccer mom gets a firm grip on reality and quits viewing this as some easy little project, then we're going to continue to live in a world of unicorns and fantasies where we believe that somebody's just going to mail her a voucher with no fucking effort. There are people that exist that literally their brains wired that way. It's the most annoying thing for my job. I got to be honest. It's hair raising, and I'm always shocked. I had a client. Matter of fact, I don't mean to be ugly about it, but I had one the other day. Oh, that's just too much work. I said, well, your case is terminated. Good luck and goodbye. Because if you're unable to do anything to participate in your case, then what can I tell you? We're supposed to sit around and do everything. You want me to feed you too? Should we come by and feed you? Spoon feed you? But yep, people are crazy. That's the reality of my business. Michelle Jackson, let's see. Is this Pepper? I live in Lancaster, PA. You know, Pennsylvania was a very particularly easy. They inundated Arizona and New Mexico to the point they actually overwhelmed the system, and then of course they had to shut it all down. Semper, I hit enter accidentally. Okay, no problem, Semper. City Survivor, hello Houston. Thank you for all your advice. Hoping you'll do a detailed video on home purchase ins and outs. Actually, in April, when I'm doing the 1 hour video for legal aid out there in Palm Beach, Florida, and legal aid across the U.S. So I'll be speaking directly with attorneys. That'll be a subject matter that I'll be explaining in the greatest detail you've ever heard. Now, I realize that there are a lot of real estate agents, house flippers that make videos. Look, these guys do not have any fundamental idea what they're talking about. They're excellent at flipping houses. They're great at building real estate agents, but they do not. And I repeat, all those videos, they make them because they're trying to get views. But the reality is, look, if you're an electrician and you wire houses, don't pretend to be a mechanic. And so I found that a lot of house flippers and other things, they tend to dip into my market. Problem is, those guys have never read a federal manual. They don't understand the system whatsoever. And the advice is so general that I could ask a drug addict off the corner to give me the same advice. Okay. So I would watch yourself in all these cute little videos. That'd be like me going out and giving advice, veterinarian advice, you know. Beautiful Brown Bay. It has been a minute. Glad to have you back. Are you down, Lopez? I see those prayer hands. Good morning. How are you? So, guys, you know, the market, I believe, as I'd mentioned, after the pandemic ends, is going to be returning to normal, and it will be. It will not be any more difficult, but the funds have definitely dried up, and that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't look. Section8consulting.com has always operated, but the thing I want to tell you is we had higher results before the pandemic happened because things became more difficult from the pandemic. It just means we're returning to normal times. But here's the great part. These immense crowds of people and the need and the demand that the pandemic produced, that is dissipating, which means that we're now going to start competing with a whole lot less people. In other words, most people have had their issue addressed. And so not only that, but under the current presidential administration, They're building a lot more affordable housing, but to be honest with you, we're short about 2.3 million properties across the U.S. To be able to house everybody that would need a voucher. Okay, so I think that's a bit of a struggle trying to meet that kind of market demand. And of course, with the crazy zoning laws we have in most cities, it makes it impossible for developers to continue to want to build low income housing and make it affordable when the cost of wood and other things are going nuts right now because of inflation. So there's so many things and dynamics that go into consideration when you're talking about getting housing, having it built, and being able to go out and deal with subsidies. So as I'm coming to a little bit of a close here, I want to discuss three different systems that you should think about if you're struggling with the concept of getting vouchers, applying for them, and so on. Vouchers don't just come from the housing authority. So we have the housing authority. When they buy a building, they call it project based. When the housing authority doesn't own any buildings and he issues you a voucher, that's a housing choice voucher that gives you the choice to go to any personal or private property or landlord to utilize that voucher for that 70% discount, basically. Now, besides that housing authority doing those two things, you may also consider subsidies. You have a developer or a bank or whoever it may be that purchases a property and they have a designated Section 202, which 202 would be anybody that is a senior over the age of 62 and older. Okay. Now, it could require a voucher or it may not, but the point is it's a subsidy, which means that on that property, every single doorknob there is attached to a subsidy. When you move into that unit, you're now subsidized. When you move out of that unit, you start all over again because you're not using a voucher. So the secondary system is called subsidies. Many of you have heard it by many different names as low income housing, affordable housing. There's lots of names. Now, besides that, in the old days, when we wanted an emergency housing voucher or permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing for people that are closer or tied more close to homelessness or being imminently homeless or actually homeless or even chronically homeless. There's many versions, right? In that situation, then you would have a system called Continuum of Care, and it's under the Housing First program, and it is administered through. They do the SPDATs through. Let's see, which one is it? I can't think of it. You caught me on a good one, but let's see if I can remember it. SPDAT, SPDAT. So you take SPDAT. It's an assessment. It's a verbal assessment. So rather than putting ink to paper, you're verbally answering questions, SPDAT. And depending on your score, would be able to yield you a voucher in a consideration of between 30 and 90 days. And it could issue one of three vouchers, which could be the emergency housing voucher, permanent supportive housing, and the last one being rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing, by the way, is RRH, and RRH is a consideration of people that are temporarily have been made kind of homeless, and they'll fund rent a certain portion of your rent every month over a duration of time, usually between 3 months and a year, and as long as 2 years, depending on what it is. Permanent supportive housing is just that. It's more like a subsidy. An emergency housing voucher is just that. It's a voucher, and it's granted based on the points, the number of points you have, and that is they run through a system called HIMS, and HMIS is the Homeless Management Information System, which is a federally interconnected system that would determine based on your answers whether or not you would qualify for specific types of vouchers. Get past all that, then you have the city, county, and state yielded vouchers, and those are, well, you can't really count on them because if the county and taxpayers in that county don't have the funding that month, then it makes it an exploding voucher because you never know whether or not you actually just leased an apartment, they're paying that rent, and then they stop, and then that'd be the cause of your eviction, you see? So dealing with non-federal funds could put you in peril. So there's so much more. I could carry on for days and hours We could probably wade through hundreds of federal laws and in the midst of all this, and of course, take a lot of different avenues. And then, of course, that's not even considering the specific types of housing authorities and what they do. And so I'll spare you all that jargon and say, so the last thing I'm going to say, guys, is to let y'all know I appreciate all the subscribers. 25,000 is a lot for a little channel that addresses a difficult topic that sometimes people may or may not enjoy. Okay. And I realize again that, at 25,000 subscribers doesn't necessarily quantify what I do. But what it does tell you is after doing it 22 years, if I can sit here for an hour straight and not take a breath, and I'm not reading from a teleprompter, then I either know what I'm doing or we're all in trouble. So, all right, guys, I'm going to take a look at the comments here to catch any stragglers that just rolled in and see what we got here. Beautiful Bay, thank you. Glad to have you back. And Bay goes on to say, congratulations on your YouTube award. You deserve it. Sharon Pratt, I'm sorry. Let me be specific. It's a housing choice voucher. Okay. Aline Woods, may I purchase for more than 2 20-minute consultations consecutively? Okay. Well, consultations are just that. I'm not really, to be honest with you, if you're trying to solve a serious issue and the way you're wanting to solve that is by talking, have me on the phone for 40 minutes straight, that's really not going to happen. Mr. and Mrs. Woods, I would suggest to you this: if I can't give you the answers that you need in 20 minutes, then you likely would need to book casework. Now, if you waited a week or two and then booked it again, and you still have more questions, it'd be appropriate. But to use small consults as a method to sit there and keep me on the phone for an hour to absolve major issues will never work. Okay, to let you know. So we can try it and see if it works. Sally Richard, I just signed up booking. Is Celine? What's that last name? Pillion? Well, I'll figure it out there. Sharon Pratt, I had a question before that. Well, Sharon, you know what? I'm one of those people that when we have a live chat, put it all together, I'm going to miss comments. Sometimes I won't even understand what you're saying because I'm looking back and forth, right? So I apologize. If I missed your question, you shoot me an email, then I'll answer it. Just make sure it's not the kind of question that's ridiculous, like, well, how do I get housing? Because that would require me to talk for about 90 days straight. And then who knows, that's too broad of a question. So be very specific. Beyond that, I have shortened my business hours to Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Standard Texas time. Okay, I'm a Southerner and out in Texas. And since we deal in programs that are federal, it means I can consult from anywhere. It wouldn't matter if I was doing it from your backyard or doing it from Alaska. Consultant's just a consultant, and if it's dealing with a federal program, that means I've dealt with all cities and states across America. And look, after all these years, I've probably dealt with every major city in America. There's no doubt in that. And there are many little one-horse towns that I have not dealt with, but it doesn't mean anything in that respect. One thing you notice when you deal with 1,000 or more housing authorities is their methodology, how they operate, those policies that they have in place, their procedures to administer vouchers, as we always quaintly say, policies, procedures, and even their data manuals, which determine how well or how good they're doing, and the statistical information of who they should be aligned to get vouchers. What I was going to say about that is, once you start dealing, you start to see something that's very common. You start connecting what all of them are pretty much doing. So, and like I always like to say at the Christmas party is, if you had one housing authority lie to you, and then you add 10 more that have lied to you, then you add hundreds and then over 1,000, or even add over 10,000 housing authorities. There's only so many ways you can lie to my office as a housing authority. So you can't reinvent the wheel of bullshit. I'm going to be able to read that. And if you hear something well enough, then it means that in most practicalities, I've understood and have been able to absolve most any problem that the housing authority has thrown at me. I've only been stumped twice in the last decade as to a question or a set of questions by a client that I was baffled and couldn't give an answer. Okay. When you deal in that volume, there's a limit. You reach a limit where there's nothing further to discuss. You've experienced housing authorities in every respect that they can offer it. And that's when you've mastered something. And of course, that's also when you want to retire because it becomes moot. It becomes very moot because it actually gets a little bit old. So, well, guys, I've enjoyed sitting here and rattling on with you guys for a bit. And I'm going to be back in a day or two. I'm going to talk about some open housing authorities. Look, anytime a housing authority is open, you should be on the spot. If it's a lottery, doesn't matter. If they're out there and they're taking numbers, you should be applying because any one of these housing authorities could be that opportunity you're looking for, and you do not need to live in the state where you're applying, not as long as it's federally funded. Okay. Anybody, anywhere could apply in any housing authority. Yes, some of them will refuse you through policy and say, hey, if you don't live locally, we're not going to take you. Well, so what? There's many that won't bother telling you that and will allow it. So we've got to quit trading advice on Facebook groups and take it from somebody that understands at a professional level that it does work, it has worked, and just be more patient. All right, blue collar mine. I can't qualify because my household size is too small. Well, unless you're minus zero, most households will qualify. I think that you've gotten a rejection at the local level. And look, you run into a spot where you got a problem like that, then if you don't know the answer to it, you can either give up or you can find somebody that has an answer. That's the best thing I can tell you, blue collar mine. If your household's too small, I can assure you, I've never run across a situation where that was the one qualifying factor and where you had no opportunity. So, and I won't add any more to that, blue collar mine, because I don't know anything about you or your case, and so it would be ill-advised for me to sit here and try to consult you in the video when I don't know one factual detail about you. Beautiful Brown Bay, thank you for sharing. All right, guys, that's it for today, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.